What is an insane coincidence that you've experienced? I know that no one is going to believe this story, but it did happen, I promise. I was born and lived for the first 20 years of my life in Montreal. My parents had friends, the Rabinoviches, who were childless. They were lovely people, and although they had been through the Holocaust and lost their entire family, never complained about life. They were super nice to me. I moved abroad to Israel, and one day my mother called me that Mr. Pesach Rabinovich had passed away. She said that his wife Leah was traveling with the coffin to Israel as he had requested to be buried in Israel and had asked if I could wait for her at the airport as she had no one she really knew in Israel. Knowing that no other family would be waiting for them, of course I readily agreed and went to the Ben Gurion airport to wait. Their flight was due from Montreal at 2 p.m. I came to the special place where the deceased are brought. Obviously, they don't bring out coffins together with all the passengers in the regular arrivals hall. Another man was waiting there, too. I asked him if he was also waiting for the coffin of Pesach Rabinovich. He said yes. I was a bit surprised, as from Leah's words, I had understood that no one else would be coming. I spoke sadly about what a harsh life Pesach went through, being a Holocaust survivor, and this new acquaintance agreed, and told me how Pesach had never been a complainer even after all the hardships he suffered. I spoke about Pesach's generosity, what a charitable man he had been, and this strange man agreed and added stories to what I already knew about Pesach. Then I asked him, how did you know him so well? Did you also live in Montreal? And the guy looks at me as though I am a dope, and says, what are you talking about? He was my brother. I cannot explain to you all the thoughts that ran crashing through my mind. Pesach? A brother? I've known him all my life, and my parents have known him. He always said he had no family. How can it be that he had a brother whom I had never heard of? Delicately I asked the man if Pesach had discovered perhaps just lately that he had a brother. The guy looked at me like I was really dopey and said, no. He came very often to visit me. Now I was totally stumped. I checked what time it was in Montreal. 7 hours difference. Too early to call my mother and tell her this incredible news. Pesach has a brother. I just could not believe it. Then I said casually, flight is coming in at 2 from Montreal. The guy says, nope. Coming in at 2:30. And it's not from Montreal, it's from Detroit. Detroit? I asked puzzledly, not understanding why Pesach would want to take a tour in a coffin from Montreal to Detroit and then to Israel instead of coming direct. Just didn't make sense. Now listen to the next snippets of conversation. Why would he come from Detroit? Because that's where he lived. No he didn't. Pesach Rabinovich lived in Montreal all his life. No he didn't. Pesach Rabinovich lived in Detroit all his life. I was stumped. I just didn't get it. And then, a strange, eerie thought came to my head. I asked, his wife is Leah, right? And the guy looked at me strangely, and said, no. His wife's name is Doris. And then it hit me. 2 Jewish men, both Holocaust survivors, both by the name of Pesach Rabinovich, both charitable men, had passed away on the same day, and had asked to be buried in Israel, and were being brought to Israel on the same day, with half an hour between them. I got this eerie feeling of the angel of death had been told to take the soul of Pesach Rabinovich, and had picked up all the Pesach Rabinoviches on the way that he could find. As I said, I doubt if anyone is going to believe me or my story. I will add that the deceased from Detroit came out a few minutes before my Pesach, and his coffin was attended by many grieving family members. Afterwards, Leah came out, red-eyed from crying, and all alone, looking so fragile and lonely. All she had in the world was Pesach, and now he was gone. I ran to hug her. One important PS, I was worried they might mix up the coffins, i.e. put the Pesach Rabinovich from Detroit into the grave bought for the other Pesach, my Pesach, and I went to the 2 hearses and looked through the window. There was a small slip of paper attached to each coffin, with the deceased's name plus his father's name. I knew that Pesach's father was Mordecai. Sure enough, in the hearse reserved for Pesach from Montreal the paper read Pesach ben Mordecai, which translated to English means Pesach the son of Mordecai. Luckily, the other Pesach's father had a different name, and so I was reassured that they would not mix up the coffins.